Hope everyone's doing well. Xavier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, joined by Vice Chairman Joe Crowley, our Task Force Chair on Gun Safety, Mike Thompson from California, and one of the champions on this issue as well from the state of Illinois, Robin Kelly, is going to be speaking with us as well. Pleased to have all three of my colleagues join us today. We had a conversation in caucus today that dealt with two very important issues. First, of course, we spend a good deal of time talking about making sure our government is providing security, keeping the trains running, doing everything that we expect it to do because we pay taxes, and that is keeping government operating. And unless our Republican colleagues can move forward with a proposal that is bipartisan, it looks like we're heading towards another Republican shutdown of government. And no one would like to see that, because we're too close to the holidays now to disrupt all the activities, not just of government, but of the lives of Americans throughout this country. So it's time to get to work. 2 months ago, we reached an agreement on the parameters for a budget, and now all we have to do is have our colleagues on the Republican side stop trying to inject things that have nothing to do with the budget, but a lot to do with their social agenda. Those are not matters that belong in a fiscal measure that is meant to keep the government operating. We spent a great deal of time as well on a second very immediate and important subject, and that is how to keep Americans safe. And the security of the American people is paramount. That is the principal responsibility of any government. And Mr. Thompson and Ms. Kelly will be hosting today a forum on this issue. Many of our colleagues, including, I believe, the Vice Chairman and I, will be attending as well to talk about this, because maybe we want Americans to know that we're thinking of those families that are right now suffering from the tragedies of losing their loved ones as a result of some of these shootings, whether it's San Bernardino, Colorado Springs, you name it, Newtown. We're almost on the anniversary of the shooting in Newtown that killed 20 children and 6 adults. But a moment of silence is not action. And if the only thing Congress is going to do is hold moments of silence every time someone is tragically gunned down, whether by someone who means us harm because we're simply Americans, or whether it's because that perpetrator didn't like the color of our skin or didn't like the content of our character, either way, that's terror. And there are families that have been terrorized, and now there are families who have lost their loved ones as a result of this terror. We must act. And there are some very straightforward things that we can do. Mr. Thompson and Ms. Kelly will speak specifically about some of those things, but certainly where there is a sweet spot of what we can do together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans here in Congress, we should. And so we're here to say that it's not enough to do moments of silence. It's time to act. We need to sound the alarm. We need to sound the alarm for people like Shannon Johnson, who died in the San Bernardino shootings, was a constituent of mine. We need to sound the alarm for Garrett Swayze, who was one of the police officers. He was one of the 3 people who was killed in Colorado Springs by someone who was out to do harm to people who were at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be free and to be safe. And for that to be the case, Congress must act. It can't just do moments of silence. With that, let me now turn to our Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 14 years ago today, as we're here today, men and women in New York City from all over the country were removing the debris from the attack of 9/11, looking for their co-workers, their loved ones, trying to find their remains. They didn't ask what the air was like or whether it was breathable air. They wanted to do their job, and that was to recover their fallen brothers and sisters, and at the same time restore the city and their country, repair their lives. And today many of them are suffering from horrible diseases directly affiliated with that attack. Many have stage 4 cancers and lesions. They don't much longer to live. They are as much victims of the attack on 9/11 as those who died that day. We owe it to them before we leave here, this Congress, to pass the 9/11 Health Act, the Zadroga Act. I'm committed to do that. I will not leave until we pass that bill this year, and I hope that my feelings are shared by not just my Democratic colleagues, but my Republican colleagues as well. Just moving to the issue of gun violence, how often will our flags fly at half-staff? It's become so normal, it's unusual in this town to see flags flying at full staff. How often will Congress stop for moments of silence on the floor to remember the victims of gun violence? This is a problem that has not necessarily a solution, but we could be taking steps to minimize the problem. And that right now, individuals who are on the no-fly list, who are on the government list of suspected terrorists, have the ability to walk into some states in their gun shops or gun shows and buy weapons without a background check. It sounds incredible that in this country that could happen. A common sense person would just think, well, of course they can't do that. Well, the truth be known is they can. And we know that they've tried to do that and have been successful at doing it as well, those who are on the watch list. So I applaud the work of Chairman Mike Thompson, not only on this particular issue, but generally on the issue of gun violence. When we talk about terrorism, terrorism is when a gun is in your face. That's terrorism. And Mike, you've been at the forefront in trying to find real solutions to this issue. And Robin Kelly, who has been outspoken about inner-city gun violence as well as terrorism. We need to find a solution to the gun issue overall. But here is one particular aspect of it that the American people understand. They understand that suspected terrorists ought not to be able, if they can't fly without going through hoops, they certainly shouldn't be able to buy a gun without going through similar hoops. And with that, I will turn it over to my good friend Mike Thompson.
Thank you, Joe. Xavier. Chairman Becerra said that on the 14th we're going to mark the anniversary of Sandy Hook, a tragedy I think that shook every man and woman in this country right to their roots. What he didn't say is it's the 3-year anniversary. 3-year anniversary of Sandy Hook, and this Congress has not done a thing to address the issue of gun violence and to step up and do something in regard to gun violence prevention. We had Charleston, we've had Navy Yard, we've had the Planned Parenthood massacre. The list goes on and on and on. There have been hundreds of mass shootings, mass violence since that 3 years ago when Sandy Hook took place. And every day, mass murder, mass shooting aside, every day some 30 people have been killed by somebody using a gun. And this Congress has done nothing to try and step it up to prevent that sort of thing from happening. Enough is enough. We need to be proactive. We need to figure out what will help prevent gun violence, and we need to take those steps. Now, it's been said a number of times that there are certain people who shouldn't have guns. Criminals, the dangerously mentally ill, domestic abusers. Well, I'll tell you who's on the top of that list, and that's people who are on the terrorist watch list. If you're on the terrorist watch list, you should not be able to legally buy a gun in the United States of America. And that's what we're trying to make sure takes place. We've done a number of things. I filed a discharge petition yesterday. Our members are on the floor right now signing that discharge petition. I'm assuming that my colleagues here today, when they're finished, will go up and sign that. We are going to make sure that the American people notice that we're trying to make them safer, and we're going to try and make sure that we can leverage the majority party in the House of Representatives to take a vote on common sense, Second Amendment compliant laws that will protect the American people. And people on the terrorist watch list, as I say, top that list. They should not be able to legally buy a gun in this country, and we need to make sure that stops. Thank you.
Robin Kelly.
Robin Kelly.
Robin Kelly.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be standing here with my colleagues. Another mass shooting, another moment of silence. And my colleagues have heard me say this. I haven't stood for a year. I did stand for Charleston because that was so blatantly racist. But I can't stand anymore because I feel, some people may feel that's disrespectful, but I feel it's respectful to the victims and to their families. When is this going to end? When are we going to do more than stand? When are we going to start taking action? Did you know that American children are 4 times more likely to be killed by a gun than Canadian children? 7 times more likely to die from gun violence than Israeli children, and 65 times more likely than British children. Despite making up 13% of the U.S. population, African Americans make up over half of all gun deaths. And 2015 is on track to be the first year in history of our nation that gun deaths will be the leading cause of death for Americans 15 through 24. I can't explain our action plan better than my colleague Mike Thompson just did, but